Is it true that I won't pray with Catholics? Let me explain.
Ryan from NeedGod.net refuses to pray with a Catholic, calls him non-Christian, and even damns him to hell. Let's take a look at the clip.
Yeah, I want you to be saved. I just know that if you think baptism or any obedience is needed for heaven, heaven's not a gift. You're rejecting the gift.
Would you
won't
pray
get it.
with me before I go?
I will pray for you. Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
would you pray with me? Would you mind maybe leading?
I don't think you're saved. So at the moment, I think
Well,
so
agree to disagree.
I
Your
will pray
opinion
for you.
doesn't matter on that regard. But if you don't want to share a prayer with me,
No, I don't pray with unbelievers.
Now, first of all, I love Roman Catholics. I love Orthodox, I love Muslims, I love Hindus, I love everyone. But I want everyone to be saved. And I am happy to pray for anyone, regardless of their background. But praying with someone is a little bit different to praying for someone. You see, I won't pray with a Muslim, but I'll pray for Muslims. The last two popes, Pope Francis and Pope Benedict XVI, both prayed with Muslims in a Muslim mosque facing towards Mecca. Now, I would never do that, because what are you doing when you do that? You're endorsing them and saying, we're both worshipping the same God. We're both together in the truth. When we can't say that. We love Muslims, but they're not in the truth. But that will be the same thing with a JW, Jehovah's Witness. I would never pray with them, but I'll pray for them. But it'll also be for somebody who believes in a faith and works gospel. I'll give you a scenario. If you're back in the 1st century and you've got these Judaizers who claim to be believers in Jesus, but yet are preaching a false gospel, a gospel of faith and works to the Galatian church. And what Paul does in Galatians 1:8 is that he pronounces an anathema upon them, meaning they're eternally condemned. Would you feel comfortable praying with those guys? The ones that the Apostle Paul has pronounced an anathema upon? I wouldn't. But their gospel was simply faith and a bit of obedience to the Mosaic law as an extra requirement for salvation. And Paul says, look, I say to you that if you accept circumcision, Christ will be of no advantage to you. So by them making one extra requirement on top of faith for salvation, Paul says Christ will not save them, will be of no advantage to them. And that's what the Roman Catholic Church does. It makes acts of obedience be extra requirements for heaven and not just faith alone. For example, the Catholic Church says if you miss even 1 week of Mass without a necessary reason, and you do it willingly, then you have lost your state of grace. And if you die in that condition, you're in hell forever. So therefore, the Roman Catholic Church is making you have to do the good work of going to church every week in order for you to enter heaven. So you're going to heaven at least partly by your good work of going to church. That's not relying on Christ alone. That's relying on yourself and what you've done. On top of that, they also say that you attain salvation through faith, baptism, and the observance of the commandments. The very issue that the Galatian Judaizers were doing, they were thinking that part of the Mosaic law was a requirement for salvation. So is the Roman Catholic Church, by making the 10 Commandments, which is part of the Mosaic law, an extra requirement to attain salvation. It's the same error. Now, this doesn't mean that I think that every Roman Catholic's going to hell. I think there are many Roman Catholics who will go to heaven because they don't believe their official church's teachings. They actually just read the Bible and they believe, yeah, I'm saved by grace through faith in what Christ did and not based on any works. No acts of obedience that I do saves me. It's Christ alone. And those people go to heaven. And I would even be happy to pray with them. But for those who think it's faith and works, like the gentleman in that clip who I was talking to, if he's made his point that he rejects the true gospel, then I'm not going to pray with him because that's going to give an endorsement that I think he's saved. Praying with somebody is in a way like a spiritual partnership. You see, Christians, we have to be discerning on who we say are Christians. I wouldn't say JWs are Christians. And neither would I say that those Judaizers were Christians either if they trust in faith and works. Similar with those who today trust in faith and works. So yes, do good works, get baptized, go to church, be obedient, but just don't think that those things get you to heaven in any capacity. That's the point I'm making. Because if you think that they do, you won't be let in. So trust in Christ alone today.